Dear students of class 5A, in today's GK class, I am going to teach you a new lesson. What is the name of the lesson? Mentioned in the board. You see, the name of the lesson is Scientific Instruments. Scientific Instruments. Lesson number 30, Scientific Instruments. Here are some points mentioned in the board. As per the points I am going to teach you. First point, instrument which can obtain a magnified view of all small objects. Next one, an instrument that can measure atmospheric pressure. And third point, an instrument that can measure the depth of ocean. Fourth point, an instrument that can check the purity of milk. Fifth point, an instrument can measure the degree of moisture in the atmosphere. And sixth point, an instrument that can measure the intensity of sound. Seventh point, an instrument that can view distant objects. And eighth point, an instrument that can measure purified height of an aircraft. An instrument which can view this object number 8. Use an instrument that can measure height of an aircraft. And next one, 9, an instrument that can regulate the temperature to a particular point. Regulate the temperature of a particular point. And next one, an instrument that can view objects in submarines. An instrument that can view objects in submarines above the sea level. So these are the following points I am going to teach you. Now you please listen to me carefully, because these are the points you have to keep it in your mind. I shall ask you questions from there and you have to answer me prominently. Now first one, mentioned in the board. What is the name of the instrument that can obtain a magnified view of all small objects, that is microscope. Microscope, an instrument through which we can obtain magnified views of all small objects. And second one, name an instrument which can measure atmospheric pressure. Name an instrument that can measure an atmospheric pressure. What is the name of this instrument? Barometer. Barometer is an instrument that can measure atmospheric pressure. And next one, name one instrument that can measure depth of ocean. Name an instrument that can measure depth of ocean. It is fathometer. Fathometer is an instrument that can measure the depth of ocean. Fathometer. And next one, name the instrument that can check the purity of milk. The name of the instrument that can check the purity of milk is lactometer. Hygrometer. Lactometer. Name an instrument that can check the purity of milk, that is lactometer. Lactometer is an instrument that can check the purity of milk. And next one, name an instrument that can measure the degree of moisture in the atmosphere. Name an instrument that can measure the degree of an instrument in the atmosphere. Degree of moisture. Name an instrument that can measure the degree of moisture in the atmosphere. That is hygrometer. Hygrometer can measure the degree of moisture in the atmosphere. And next one, name the instrument that can measure the intensity of sound. The atmosphere that can measure the intensity of sound is audiometer. Audiometer can measure the intensity of sound. Audiometer can measure the intensity of sound. And next point, name one instrument that can view distant objects in space. Name an instrument that can view the distant objects in space, that is telescope. Telescope is an instrument that can view the distant objects in space. Telescope. Through telescope we can view the distant objects in the space. That's why telescope is discovered. Can you tell me the name who discovered the telescope? It was Vasco da Gama. No? Galileo. Sorry, not Vasco da Gama. Vasco da Gama discovered the sea route to India. But it was Galileo who discovered the telescope. Galileo used to spend night sleeplessly and always viewed, always watched the activities of the nature and the black sky. Always looked at the black sky, always looked at the sky during night, and for minutes, after hours, he spent the whole night by way of watching different types of changes in the sky. And in course of studying the nature, in course of studying the universal system through open eyes, one day he discovered telescope. And while watching it, he once fell down into a well suddenly, because he always remained unconscious, because he always remained absent-minded. Because of that discovery, the new things would come in his mind, and he tried to discover unknown things. And by this way, one day he discovered telescope. Who was he? He was Galileo. Anyway, next one. Who can you name the can you name the instrument? Can you name the instrument that can measure the height of an aircraft from the sea level? Can you name an instrument that can measure the can measure the height of an aircraft above the sea level? It is altimeter. Altimeter is an instrument that can measure the height of an aircraft above the sea level. And next one, used to regulate. Name an instrument. Name an instrument that can regulate the temperature to a particular point. That can regulate the temperature of a particular point. That is thermostat. Thermostat is the instrument that can regulate the temperature to a particular point. Thermostat or thermostat is an instrument that can regulate the temperature to a particular place. And next one, name one instrument that can view objects in submarines above the sea level. Name an instrument that can view the objects that can view the objects in submarines above the sea level. What is the name of the instrument? The name of the instrument is periscope. Periscope is an instrument can view the objects in submarines above the sea level. And next one, name an instrument that can measure the strength of electric current. Name an instrument that can measure the strength of electric current, that is ammeter. Ammeter can measure the strength of electric current. Can measure the strength of electric current, that is ammeter. And next one, and next point I am going to write it in the board. The next point I am going to write it in the board. What is this? I am going to write it in the board. Up to 10 I taught you. What is the things I have already mentioned. Please look at the board. First point, instrument to obtain magnifying view of small objects, that is, what is this? That is microscope. That is microscope. Objects, that is the microscope. Microscope. And next one, used to measure atmospheric pressure. Barometer, used to measure can make atmospheric pressure, that is barometer. Atmospheric pressure. Barometer. And next one, used to measure the depth of ocean. Used to measure the depth of ocean. Ocean. Fathometer. Okay? Fathometer. And next one, an instrument that can check the purity of milk, that is lactometer. That is lactometer. And next one, an instrument that to measure the degree of moisture in the atmosphere. The degree of moisture in the atmosphere, that is hygrometer. What is this? Hygrometer. Hygrometer. And then an instrument to measure the intensity of sound. Intensity of sound. Intensity of sound. Audiometer. An instrument that can measure the intensity of sound. Audiometer. And next one, an instrument that can view distant objects. An instrument that can view distant objects, that is telescope. 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 And next one, an instrument to measure height of an aircraft above the sea level. Above the sea level, that is altimeter. Above the sea level. Then 8, An instrument to measure height of an aircraft already completed. 10 up to 10 completed. Now 11. Sorry. Now up to from 8 onwards. And measure an instrument to measure height of an aircraft above the sea level. An instrument that can measure height of an aircraft, height of above the sea level. An instrument that can measure height of an aircraft above the sea level. Height of an aircraft above the sea level, that is altimeter. That is altimeter. An instrument that can measure height of an aircraft above the sea level is known as altimeter. The next one, point number 9. An instrument to regulate the temperature to a particular point. An instrument to regulate the temperature to a particular point. An instrument to regulate the temperature to a particular point. What is the name of this instrument? That is thermostat. That is thermostat is the instrument can regulate the temperature to a particular point. Then next one, to a particular point. The next one, point number 10, an instrument to view objects in submarines above the sea level. An instrument that can view objects in submarines. Object that can view objects in submarines above the sea level. Above the sea level. An instrument that can view objects in submarines above the sea level. What is the name of this instrument that can view objects in submarine above the sea level? That is periscope. Periscope is an instrument that can view objects in submarine above the sea level. Periscope. And next one, point number 11. Name an instrument that can measure the strength of electric current. An instrument that can measure the strength of electric current. The strength of electric current. An instrument that can measure the strength of electric current. What is the name of this instrument that can measure the strength of electric current? That is ammeter. Ammeter. That is ammeter. Ammeter is an instrument that can measure the strength of electric current. That can measure the strength of electric current. Ammeter is an instrument that can measure the strength of electric current. Ammeter. And next one, point number 12. Point number 12. What is this? Name an instrument to detect the direction. An instrument that can detect the direction, an instrument that can detect the direction and range. That can detect the direction and range of an approaching aeroplane. Approaching aeroplane. That can approaching an aeroplane. An instrument that can detect the direction of an approaching aeroplane. What is this? That is radar. Radar. An instrument that can detect the direction and range of an approaching aeroplane. That is radar. R-A-D-D-A-R. Radar. And next one, an instrument that can convert the sound waves. An instrument that can convert the sound wave. An instrument that can convert the sound waves. An instrument that can convert the sound waves. What is this? Sound waves. Instrument that can convert the sound waves. Sound waves. What is this? Microphone. It is microphone. It is microphone. Microphone is an instrument that can convert the sound waves. And then next one, Next one, point number 14, I am going to teach you. What is this point number 14? Point number 14. Point number 14 is name an instrument to, an instrument that can point messages sent from one place to another on telegraph line. On telegraph lines, that is teleprinter. And last one, an instrument to detect earthquake. An instrument that can detect earthquake. And to record its intensity, and can record its intensity. What is this? That is seismometer. That is seismometer. An instrument that can detect earthquake and can record its intensity is known as seismometer. This is point number 15. So these are the points, my dear students. You have to learn it properly. You have to keep all the points perfectly in your mind so that you can answer my question prominently. Whenever you will be asked, I need the correct answer. I would like to see you are answering all the points, all the questions correctly. The questions which you will be asked, the question which I ask you, I would like to see the answer, whatever you are giving me, are correct up to this. Thank you.